Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Department of Health and Human Services is shrinking cash awards for its top performers. In its place, the department is shifting a majority of its bonus budget to cover special act awards with eligibility criteria that are less well-defined. This is all part of a government-wide push to limit the number of top scores federal employees get on their annual performance reviews. Federal News Network's Jory Heckman is here with more. Jory, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Terry. Great to be here.
How exactly is HHS changing its performance awards here?
Yeah, so what HHS is doing is they are splitting up the pot of money that they have reserved for these kinds of performance awards and how they've handled those in the past. Previously, all of their awards and bonuses, about 80% of those went to performance awards. So if you scored a 5 out of 5, you got a certain amount of money. If you got a 4 out of 5, you got a certain amount of money. And that was pretty well known as to what you were going to get based on what score you were receiving. And things are changing a little bit. HHS is splitting up that pot of money 40% as opposed to 80% in the past. That 40% will now go toward performance awards, and the remaining 60% that will go to incentive awards. They go by many names. They also go by special act awards or on the spot awards. And the criteria for that is a little less clear. That's really at the discretion of agency leadership, agency management to award those bonuses, those financial incentives. And they're really at the discretion of that agency leadership.
What's driving the changes in this practice?
Well, what we heard from HHS, from a spokesperson there, is that HHS is trying to standardize how awards funding is distributed across the department. And more broadly, this is part of the Trump administration through its Office of Personnel Management to ensure that there is consistency in how federal employees are rated and how they are rewarded through those performance ratings. What we've seen recently is that OPM has told agencies for next budget cycle, not the one we're currently in, to be more stringent with who gets these top ratings, that 4s and 5s and 3s will be more stringently watched, and that there will be a forced distribution on how many of those top scores can be awarded. Essentially, there'll be a finite number of those top scores, and you can't really give them to everyone, even if managers believe they are top performers.
Are you hearing from employees on their thoughts about this change?
Yeah, employees are certainly concerned by all of this. It's been a rocky year for HHS. What we've seen recently is that they are going on a round 2 of reductions in force that are more targeted, but this is after the HHS sent layoff notices to about 10,000 employees last year. And in other cases, HHS has been cracking down on reasonable accommodations, especially those that pertain to telework. So employees that I've spoken to have said that this is just kind of the latest hit to morale, that this is happening fairly late in the performance evaluation cycle, and that they were told one thing just months ago, that they were going to get much more generous performance awards, and now they're being told that they are shrinking. To give you an example here, I spoke to employees at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They were told in late March that if they got a 5 out of 5, if they got an outstanding evaluation, they were on track to get a 4% bonus, equivalent to 4% of their base pay. And what they've been told now is that those same people, those outstanding performance receivers, they're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5%. And that's the biggest hit. Actually, the top performers are seeing the biggest shrink in what they're going to get as far as performance awards. People who get 4s and 3s, they're getting a more modest cut.
Jory, how does this approach to bonus payments square, I guess, with the administration's philosophy around performance management? If you want folks to have sustained excellent performance, doesn't it make sense to offer them a bonus for that kind of work?
Yeah, I would say that the Trump administration has made it pretty clear that as they retool some of this, they are of the opinion that there has been a little bit of great inflation, that it was just too easy to get a 5 or a 4 in these performance evaluations in the past, that there needs to be a more stringent criteria for those 4s and 5s, that essentially need to have a stricter standard for those. And so that's something we're going to see play out in the coming years here, but this is happening fairly late in the process for this year. These are changes that HHS is rolling out quickly, didn't socialize to very many people. And even by OPM's standards, this seems to be not on the level with what they have recommended. We saw guidance from OPM Director Scott Cooper last summer. He said that performance awards should make up about 60% of the bonus pot for every agency. And by the numbers here, HHS is not doing that. They have shrunk that down to 40%, cut that money in half compared to what we've seen in prior years. For what it's worth, I did reach out to an OPM spokesperson about that, and she said that at the end of the day, OPM's guidance is just that. It's guidance, and that agencies have the final word on what they choose to implement.
How are you seeing this play out in other agencies across the government?
Well, at other agencies, we've seen things kind of subjectively play out. It was only a couple of weeks ago that we saw the State Department tell employees, again, fairly late in the process, that they may have received one grade from their immediate supervisor, but State Department leadership said, actually go back and lower those scores. These were too generous of a scores, going back to this theme that there is grade inflation. And for what it's worth, I did check in with Ron Sanders, someone who is an expert in these affairs. He's a former OPM individual. He managed pay for performance work over there. He was on the Federal Salary Council. So based on his experience, he does say that this does seem to be a way for HHS to try to deal with grade inflation, and that this is a way to ensure that people who are doing exceptional work are the ones who are going to get the biggest payout as far as bonuses.
That's Federal News Network's Jory Heckman. Jory, thanks for the story, and we'll keep an eye on it.
Thanks, Terry.
You can find his full story at federalnewsnetwork.com.